Well, greetings once again, poetry lovers. And it's time for us to give our second part of our presentation on acoustics. And this time, as you'll recall, we talked about sound devices the first time, but now we are going to move into verse systems and rhythm. So let's get this thing started. Okay, so as before, acoustics, also known as sonics or melopoetics. And so now, just as a reminder of the two key distinctions that we're going to make when we talk about sonics or acoustics is in this presentation, our focus is going to be on meter, okay, which is from the Greek for measure. So you can think about this in terms of, say musical type conversations. And the second is melody. So again, a sort of musical orientation here, melody being from the Greek for a musical phrase. Okay, so when you hear meter, and you'll hear me use the expressions, whether I'm writing or like an assessment for you or what have you, I'll talk about like a metrical pattern. Whenever we're talking about meter, we're talking about rhythm or cadence. Okay, so if you think about it in those terms, I'll be a piece of cake for you. So meter is then a measurement in poetry that's based on any of the following basic systems of count. And we're talking about English poetry here, okay? So the number of accented syllables in a line of verse, okay? Otherwise known as stressed syllables. The number of syllables total in a line of verse. The number of accented and unaccented syllables, these occur in defined, easily recognizable combinations. Okay, so the function of all these things is to create patterns, to reinforce meaning, and maybe even alert the reader to something. So for example, if you start out you're reading a poem, and say the opening line is a regular cadence, ba-dum, 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 ba-dum. And then subsequent lines move away from that basic pattern, then you know that something's up, okay? Because any poet that we're going to study has got the skill to be able to select words that will match a particular cadence. Okay, so when things change, when the metrical pattern changes, then you know something generally is changing with respect to the import of the poem, the thematic concern, whatever happens to be. Okay, so here are your common verse systems. And so these again are verse systems in English. So the first system is pure accentual, okay? The second is pure syllabic. The third is accentual-syllabic. Fourth is counted verse, all right? That has to do with the number of words in a line. And then the fifth is free verse. This is also known as open form, and we'll talk about that in a subsequent presentation. Okay, our sixth is alliterative verse, and you generally aren't going to run into this outside of the sort of Old English poetry that you'd see in Beowulf. Okay. All right, here we go. So pure accentual. So this is the meter of the earliest Germanic poetry, okay? It is preserved in nursery rhymes and in a good deal of lyric verse. And so the basic principle is this, all right? So you're gonna wanna write this down and memorize it, all right? There must be an identical number of strong stresses or accented syllables per line. Now, believe it or not, and I think I referenced this in the introductory matter to this presentation, that rap poetry, hip hop poetry, okay, rap verses and hip hop verses all follow this basic rule of pure accentual, okay? So you might have a line in a song. So Eric B. and Rakim, I know that's super old school, but it's easily recognizable in their work, that there might be 13, 14, 15, 16 total syllables in a line that have only 4 stressed syllables, okay? So a lot of this has to do with the beats per minute that you're gonna get and the upper limit in terms of like how many beats you're going to get per minute really has to do with how fast somebody can speak. Okay, so so here we go. I'm going to give you. So I mentioned that this is nursery rhyme. So I'm going to have to crank out of presentation mode here, so I can use my handy dandy stylus here, and we're going to go into let's see what color I want to use. Let's do something that you should be able to, and we'll just stick with white because you can easily see that. Okay, so even though I've designated it here with using capitals, that tells you it's a stressed syllable. I'm going to go ahead and show you how to mark a stressed and unstressed syllable. And your basic mark for a stressed syllable looks like this, okay? It's a forward slash. So star, light, star, bright, first, star, and then we have an unaccented syllable. It looks like this, like a little trough. I see tonight. I wish I may. I wish I might have the wish I wish tonight. Okay, starlight, star bright, first star I see tonight. I wish I may, I wish I might have the wish I wish tonight. You can hear the cadence of those lines. Yes, the numbers out here on the edge, right? That's all the total syllables in those lines. So notice that this meets the standard for accentual-syllabic because it has 4 beats per line, 4 strong stresses per line, although the total number of syllables is going to differ. Okay, let's see. So there you go. Oh, what happened there? Oh, really? I gotta do this again? Yeah, sorry about that. Okay, anyway, here we go. All right, pure syllabic. So this is a basic system of modern French and Japanese poetry, although some writers in English use this particular system. Okay, so it's built on the syllable, which is the smallest segment of human speech. So lines are measured in syllable count only, not by accents or metrical feet. We'll talk about metrical feet when we get into the next verse system. Okay, so what I want to notice when I said it's the smallest segment of speech. Notice the difference between the word, or if you want to think of it, this is a syllable, at, and squelch. So if you want to say this, like hit pause or whatever, say the word at, or in, okay, out, and squelch or squinch. The duration in those syllables is a lot longer, and there's a lot more happening in the mouth when you say the word squelch versus saying the word at. Okay. All right, so here we go. Pure syllabic. Here's an example. So this is the opening to a poem by Dylan Thomas called "Do Not Go Gentle into That Good Night." Right. So he is speaking. Dylan Thomas has presented a speaker who is ostensibly addressing his father. Okay, and he's basically telling him not to die. Right. So do not go gentle into that good night. Old age should burn and rave at close of day. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Right? So what I have marked here is the stressed and unstressed syllables in these lines. So notice the speaker is being emphatic about this, right? He's not saying, oh, you know, it might not be such a great idea if, you know, you just didn't die or whatever. I mean, he is driven by emotion. When you see stressed syllables in a line, okay, then you should put 2 and 2 together that something is happening from an emotional standpoint in the line. Okay, so this is how I have marked it. All right, and notice here that this is an example then of pure syllabic poetry, because throughout the poem, Thomas is writing to an 11-beat line. Okay. All right, here we go. No other metrical pattern besides that. If you look at that, you can't say that, oh, gee, I noticed that there's a particular pattern of stressed and unstressed syllables. The only pattern really is the number of syllables total. Okay. Now, Accentual-syllabic. So this is the verse system that most of you are probably familiar with. Say earlier in high school, you probably learned about this when you had to read some Shakespeare, Julius Caesar or something like that. Your teacher probably dropped, oh, iambic pentameter on you. Okay, what I'm hoping to do here is to explain like where that verse system came from. Okay, and what its basic rules are. Okay, so this system involves defined patterns of accented and unaccented syllables. Okay, so it's built on pairs or triads, so twos or threes of syllables that are called feet. Okay, they're called metrical feet. And here they are. These are, listen, there are a large number of these patterns, starting with two unaccented syllables all the way to 3 accented syllables. So all the stuff in between, but the ones that I'm going to show you here are the ones that are most common. Okay, so it's the iamb, the trochee, the spondy, the anapest, and then the dactyl. So I'm going to have to I have to crank out of this guy. So I'm going to go ahead and mark and show you how this looks. So here we are still with the my pen should still work. So an iamb then is an unstressed followed by a stressed syllable. So the word amuse. Right. So if you're going to write what an iamb looks like, it looks like this. Okay. A trochee then, first syllable is stretched in laughter. Laughter. Okay. So writing it out like that, that's how that goes. Now spondy then is 2 accented syllables. Okay. Boom, boom. Baseball. Okay. Lots of cuss words are either trochees or spondies, because you're trying to get the attention of whoever it is that you're addressing, right? So spondy then, boom, boom. Okay. Then an anapest is 2 unstressed syllables followed by a stressed syllable. Understand. Okay, so understand. Then a dactyl is the first syllable stressed and then the following 2 are not. Okay, so it's underwear, right? Now, here's how I'm going to help you to remember the difference between an anapest and a dactyl. Okay, and you just bear with me here. Okay, so this thing here at the bottom, pretend it looks like a pterodactyl. Okay, so there's this little, beak thing that protrudes out into the dinosaur world, and then these 2 little troughs are its wings. Okay, I know it doesn't look like a pterodactyl, but it's going to help you, I promise. It'll let you know dactyl, pterodactyl. It's got the beak that leads, so that's how you're going to remember it. Okay, that's the way I remember it. I mean, honestly. Okay, so there we go. Those are the 5 basic feet that you're going to be responsible for: iamb, trochee, spondy, anapest, dactyl. Okay. All right, so here we go. Back in the saddle. All right, so here's the second part of the accentual-syllabic verse system. Okay, a line of poetry is measured by the number of feet that it features. All right, so the names for the line lengths then are as follows: monometer, okay, mono, 1 foot; dimeter, 2 feet. So you know this from die whatever is 2 of something. Trimeter, trimeter, however you want to pronounce it, it's trimeter, 3 feet. Okay. Tetrameter, meaning 4. Tetra, 4. Okay. Pentameter, 5 feet. And then hexameter, 6 feet. Heptameter, 7, and octameter is 8 feet. Now I've got tetrameter and pentameter in yellow to indicate that these are the most common of the line lengths that you're going to see in accentual-syllabic poetry. Okay. rarely are you going to see lines above 8 feet in English poetry. Now, we may, over the course of our study of poetry, run up on poets who use like long line lengths, like Walt Whitman used super long lines, C.K. Williams, super long lines, and then you'll have other poets that will write poems that have really long lines that might even go to the margin in a page that you're going to see them in, and then wrap around. But generally, okay, these are not going to exhibit any sort of metrical pattern like we're talking about here. Okay, so let's just make sure that you're clear on. You hardly ever see a line that's longer than 8 feet. So now pop quiz, and this is just a math problem. Okay, so the shortest number of syllables that you could get in an accentual syllabic system is gonna be 2, right? So we'd be talking about like iambic, spondaic, or trochaic monometer. And then by contrast, the longest that you'd see would be 24 syllables in a line if you run up against like dactylic octameter or what? Anapestic octameter. Okay, make sense? All right, good. All right, so next verse system is called counted verse. So this operates upon the number of words, but not the number of syllables or stresses or any of that kind of thing per line. And so scholar Paul Hoover, cheekily says, counted verse reminds us of the arbitrariness of all poetic forms, and he's absolutely right. However, here's an example of a poem, and this is written by May Swenson. It's called 4-Word Lines. So Swenson actually writes a good number of poems in using counted verse. Okay, and so if you want to, write poetry of your own, it's an interesting way to follow this kind of rule. Okay, and so it's and I'm just going to go ahead and read this. 4-Word Lines by May Swenson. Your eyes are just like bees, and I feel like a flower. Their brown power makes a breeze go over my skin. When your lashes ride down and rise like brown bees' legs, your pronged gaze makes my eyes gauze. I wish we were in some shade and no swarm of other eyes to know that I'm a flower breathing bare, laid open to your bees' warm stare. I'd let you wade in me and seize with your eager brown bees' power a sweet glistening at my core. Okay, now listen. So if you listen to the other presentation on sound devices, look at how unbelievably rich this poem is in sound. Okay, I mean all these look at all the Z sounds, right? Because she's matching the Z sound that we typically associate with what? Bees. Okay, buzzing. So look at all the Z sounds that are making an appearance in this particular poem, right? Now, this also is an unbelievably erotic poem, okay, right? I mean, it's because metaphorically speaking, yeah, we look at it at that level, but this is a poem about a relationship between two people. And so we know that what do bees do, okay? They pollinate stuff, and that's the way that flowers and flora reproduce, yeah? So, okay, so see what she's doing there? Fantastic. Love May Swenson, love May Swenson. Okay, now, last verse system we're going to talk about, alliterative verse. Okay, so it's early verse of the Germanic languages. Okay, so you remember when we talked in the presentation on sound devices, talked about alliteration. All right, so here's where this thing plays out. So alliteration is a basic structural principle rather than just an occasional embellishment. It is not done for aesthetics, although of course it does sound beautiful when you read the lines aloud, okay? But it is part of the structure of the poem, okay? So the only Indo-European languages that used it as a governing principle in their writing of poetry is Old Norse, Old English, Old Saxon, Old Low German, and Old High German, okay? So in the Germanic alliterative verse, all right, so I'm getting super technical here. I'm not expecting you to necessarily memorize this. If we're talking about like a modern and contemporary poetry class, I just want to tell you what this stuff is. I'm big on giving you the information, and you do with it what you want, okay? But you don't necessarily have to memorize this unless we're studying Beowulf. Then, you know, or a cadenced hymn or whatever, then you need to know it for sure, okay? So here's the elements. So you've got 2 hemistichs, okay? These are half lines that are separated by a caesura or medial pause, all right? So 2 lines, 2 parts of a line that are joined or separated, I should say, by that medial pause, and they are joined by the alliterative words, okay? So there's 1 or 2 alliterating letters in the first half line preceding the medial caesura, and these alliterate with the first stressed syllable in the second half line. Okay, so here's an example from Beowulf. So the spear deigns in days gone by. Notice that where's the pause? Happens naturally after deigns. So the spear deigns in days gone by. What words alliterate there? Deigns and days. And they also, what? Slant rhyme, right? They assonate, that the long A sound, okay? And the kings who ruled them had courage and greatness, okay? After them is where you're gonna get that medial pause. I mean, I guess I could mark this. You know, why not? Why not? Okay, so here's the way that you mark a medial pause. You do it with 2 vertical lines, just like that, okay? So the H sound in who and the H sound in had, that's where you're gonna have that's where your alliteration shows up. We have heard of those princes' heroic campaigns. There's your medial pause. There's the H in heard and the H in heroic. There was shield sheepson. Now here in this line, you'll see that the punctuation gives you a heads up as to where the caesura is going to show up. So we're going to go ahead and mark it. Boom and boom. Okay. So shield sheepson, scourge of many tribes. Now look, this is a translation by Seamus Haney. It's my favorite translation. It's absolutely fantastic. J.R.R. Tolkien has done a translation. You know, you got Chickering's done a translation. All these people have done translations. There's even this crazy one that's happened over the last 5 years, where the opening line, instead of so, like in this one, is bro. Okay, because the translator says that the poet would be trying to get the attention of all these people in the, you know, guys in the mead hall that are all pounding mead, which is an alcoholic beverage, in case you didn't know that. And so he'd be going like, bro. And then he's also like a drunken guy at the end of the bar. Okay, so or in the mead hall, like, okay, man, that's taking a little bit far, but I like the idea. I mean, you know, poetry is meant to be interpreted in all kinds of creative ways. So, my point about the translation is this: shield and sheepson, as you know from our earlier study, right? Okay, those definitely alliterate. But you're saying to yourself, yeah, but sh and sk don't sound alike. Well, in this case, all right, we're giving it the alliterative nod. All right, this terror of the hall troops had come far. Here's our caesura. We're going to give the H in hall and the H in had as our alliterative business. A foundling to start with, again, that punctuation gives away where the caesura is. A foundling to start with, he would flourish later on, okay? And you might also say, okay, well, G, you know, foundling and flourish, those also alliterate. Okay, but again, notice the pattern here, okay? Especially if we go back up here to look at, let's see if I can do it without screwing this up. There we go. All right, so spear deigns. Notice how close the alliterative words are to the caesura. So this is what gives you the indication as to what's happening there, okay? All right, so that's it. I'm not going to do the rest of it. If you have questions about this, then shoot me an email, text, smoke signals, whatever happens to be, and hope you enjoy the presentation. Peace.